Hello there folks, it's me Ferenc on board, RPG Maker Whale, RPG Maker designer and developer working for over 4,000 hours in RPG Maker, here to share some extra tip. And if there is something that is daunting for a lot of the people who especially start using RPG Maker and they don't have coding knowledge, well, if there is something daunting, I'm placing my bets that this button here, the script button, looks very daunting. And there is a question that I've been seeing around, and I'm sure a lot of people feel a bit frustrated by this aspect, is how can I use conditionals in a more optimized way? Because a lot of people who don't know how to use scripts, when they have more conditionals, they would simply constantly put one conditional into another, right? So if you have four conditions that are needed to be checked, well, they will simply do something like this, right? What if you need someone to be off? Well, you'll simply put it off and you will check things like this, right? This one is good to use. It's not necessarily bad, okay? This one is good, especially if you want to use the else branch specifically for each of these. But how can you make it so that you check multiple conditions at the same time? Say you don't need to have an else branch for those and put these three, right, conditionals into one conditional. Well, you can't do this from the main page, right, conditional. You can't do this from here, but you can do this from this magical box, which is the script box, right? So in case you don't know the scripts for checking a variable and a switch, I will write them here so that you have them for reference. Game switches dot value, let's say 3, okay, dollar game uh, variables, right, dot value, let's say 9, all right. When you use these here, remember that in RPG Maker, uh, now this symbol means a comment, so everything beyond this will not be taken into account by the code. So remember that variable and switch IDs are something like this, okay? When you write them here, you don't write any of the zeros in front, right? So if you have, let's say, variable of, I don't know, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay? You don't write the 0, let's say, no, 0, 103, right? You don't write the 0 in front, but you write the zeros within, right? But the 0 in front, you never write, okay? Because it can be understood, the game will understand it as a whole different number, okay? So this is how technically you have these two, right? Switches and variable. Now this is basically how to check them. If you press start for your game to check it and press F12, you'll see the debug window. If you type this, for example, and press enter, it will return you the value of the last value of the variable 3, switch 3, or the variable 103. So you can use this tip, for checking variables and switch values. Now, if you want to make a bigger event, you can use the script box. If you know how to put the whole code, I mean the conditional and the code itself, or if you don't want to do it in that way, and I would tell you don't use scripts too often because they're less optimized than these command lines that you can easily click and they perform the code for you. But there are situations in which you'll use scripts. So if you want to do uh, these three conditionals, well, you have to get acquainted to two operands, okay? Now, this is called an operand, this is called an operand, okay? But in RPG Maker, well, programming in general, there are also others, and, well, you have this one, well, technically you have this one, you have this one, you have this one, and you have this one. But for programming purposes, and obviously in most cases, you will use these two. This one means and, this one means or. Okay? So you have to check things based on what you need. Let's say in this three case, I need these three situations to simply be available, or I need three switches to be available. So what you do, you put the switches in between brackets. Okay, so you have dollar game switches dot value, let's say number one. We need to be true, right? You can say equals true, right? So this, you check the first situation whether it is true. But how do we do for the other situations? Well, what do I need? I need all three of those to be true. So if I need all of these to be true, I can say and, wait, and, okay, 2 also needs to be true, and 3 needs to be true, okay? Now the way the code will read this, it's always from left to right. So it will check whether first condition is true, then if the second condition is true, and then the third condition if it is true. Or you can say equals false if you need it instead. So let's say you need 1 true, 2 false, 3 false, but you need these three to be so you use and in between. What this and means is that this one needs to uh, be true, and the one after this one needs to be true, right? Once this one is checked, whether it applies to the condition, well, it needs to be true. If it is true, it goes on. If this one is false, it simply disregards everything, because and means all these situations, or the situation before and after and, both need to fulfill the condition. If any one is not true, right, if this one, for example, would be false, the code simply doesn't bother reading anything afterwards. Okay? Now, compare this, let's say, to or. Okay, let's say that we need or, right? Or is different from and because what I wrote in here is, see, in programming, a conditional will always trigger, right? When you have a condition, it always triggers the code within if only it is true. If it is false, the code is simply skipped. The condition is skipped with the coding within, right? So this conditional, if any of these three, right, is false, it is simply skipped because what you said is 1 must be true and 2 must be true and 3 must be true. So all 3 must be true, else the condition will be skipped. What I wrote here is 1 must be true, or 2 must be true, or 3 must be true, right? Or if you need false in any situation, you can simply put it there, right? But or means that any of the two situations before it and after it, if it applies to the condition, then you simply execute it. So in this situation, I need 1 to be true, or 2 must be true, or 3 must be true. So at most, any two of these three can be false. If at least one is true, well, it will simply execute the code, right? This is a situation in which any of these three must be true. The other two can be false, right? Can you use this in more complex ways? Well, obviously, depending on how you place your parentheses, right? I'm not gonna show you some of the most mind-twisting conditionals that I came up with, but you can simply play a bit with these, right? So let's say um, I have and instead, right? So I need to have 1 true, 2 must be true, right? And then 3 can be true, right? After these two are checked, these two must be true because you have and. Well, either of these two must be true or this one because you have or. Now, in case you use and, right, you simply can write things like this. When you use or, you gotta be a bit more specific because you can leave things like this or you can have it, in a deeper layer. What a deeper layer means is you add an extra pair of brackets. Don't forget the brackets because it's easy to skip one and then you'll be met with horrible errors. So what this means is you have two brackets in here. So this big bracket will check all the conditions within. It will check first if this is true and this is true, right? If any of this is false, then this bracket simply denies your code. If both of these are true, well, you get a result that means, okay, you can pass. And then when it leaves out of this bigger parenthesis, it checks the other condition, this one, right? So you either need, so you have two situations now. You no longer have three. You have these two, which are taken here in this parenthesis, which is basically the first conditional, right? And this one will be pitted with this one. Say in this case, any of these is false now, right? This simply false, right? If any one of these is false, then this AND simply no longer counts. So this is simply, let's say in a way, no longer taken into account. So the interpreter skips to this and says OR and this one. So if this one is true, even if any of these is false, well, the code will still be applied because this one is true, right? Now, if this one is false, but both of these are true, the code will still be applied because this part, right, within these brackets is correct, right? So the short situation would be something like this, okay? Let's say you have condition 1, condition 2, condition 3, condition 4, condition 5. Okay? When you use AND in here, well, you don't need to put it necessarily into a bracket, right? You have AND, right? So 1 needs to be true, 2 needs to be true. Okay. What if I need 3 or 4 or 5 to be true necessarily, but one of those needs to be true necessarily, and it is imperative that one of those needs to be true? Well, and, right, you put these into a bracket and you have OR, right? Easy peasy, right? So 1 must be true and 2 must be true, and either of these three, one of these three must be true, right? Uh, I don't know, what if you want to have 1 or 2 or 3, no, 1 or 2 must be true, right? And then we need and 3 must be true, right? And, well, wait a bit. And 4 must be true or 5 must be true, right? So when you have double parentheses, okay, everything in here will be taken as one entry, just like this condition, right? Because what you write in between these parentheses is a condition, which must be checked. When you write more conditions, well, you can simply write them like this. Each condition in its own parenthesis, and all those conditions that must be simultaneously checked, like 1 and 2, these are simultaneously checked within this parenthesis, right? Because what this script means is, well, all these are put in a bigger conditional, because don't forget you're in a conditional branch already, right? And you don't write the parentheses for this conditional branch. The game will do that for you, right? So everything that is here will be taken on layers, right? So 3, for example, is the first layer, right? Because it's just one single. These two, for example, are in a, let's say, an inner layer. So everything that is in between these two parentheses will be simultaneously checked, right? 1 and 2. You can add multiple ones, and all of those within that parenthesis will be checked before comparing the result within that parenthesis with anything outside. Let's say you can have here you can have or another parenthesis, right? 6 and 7. Okay? So at first, wait, like this. So 6 and 7 must be checked together. Uh, yes. 6 and 7 will be checked together because they are the lowest, right? And if both are true, well, it will leave this and say, okay, now this is true, I need to check the other part as well. So it's out of these parentheses, which reminds me that there is a need for another one here, right? So it's out of this one, and what it has to do, well, it is inside another parenthesis, okay, which is this one, right? So it pits the result of this or this or this. So any of these one situation, this situation, or this situation has to be true, okay? Either this, or this. Once this has been done in this parenthesis, well, it will pit the result of this one with the next one and says, if this is true and this is also true, right? It moves further. If any is false, well, the code is simply skipped because you have and, right? Up till here, this part and this part must be true. When it moves further, you have again and. So if any of these is false, the code is skipped. If both are true, you have and, it goes into this parenthesis. So what do you have? Well, you have a parenthesis with a lower level, right? You have 4, which is tested, 5, which is tested, and you have or. So either of these two, if it is true, well, this one is considered now true. And means that this must also be true, right? If both of these are false, well, this one fails because it is false. You have and, so, well, one of the three situations here is false. The code is skipped. Well, hopefully this isn't too much of a headache, but, well, I will leave you this as an example, okay? This is a bit more advanced as scripting. If you only need to check one or two, three conditionals, you can use just this, okay? And put false in case you need to use false, right? So hopefully this was, well, enlightening enough. Hopefully this piece of wisdom allows you to code a bit better. Yes, there will be mistakes. Don't forget, when you open a bracket, always close the bracket because you will be met with errors. And in JavaScript, since this programming language is a bit quirkier, if you don't close a bracket when you should, the code can get misinterpreted and you will get up with some awkward results. In case the interpreter doesn't realize that that bracket is not closed, when you have hundreds or thousands of lines of code, the interpreter can simply mistake your next parenthesis as the one for the one which was not closed, and the code will be interpreted in a wholly different way, and it will give you awkward results. So learn to use simple steps and grow slowly and surely. Remember to code wisely. And well, this being said, take care. Wishing you an awesome day. Ferenc Board signing out.